Better?
There you go. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we're all online now, and we should be able to have everybody watching. You may be watching through different forms or different mediums. You may be able to see us through a Facebook Live. You may see us through through YouTube and or Instagram. Alan, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Test 1, 2. Alan, are you able to hear me? No. Let's see. Let's see. We're doing a mic test. Mic test is working on our end over here. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Okay. Yes, we can hear you now.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all? All right, let me see. Let's see what's going on. How about now? Test, test, test. Mike, can you hear me? Alan? No? Testing 1, 2. Still can't hear me? Okay. All right. I know I am coming through the speakers. Can somebody just put on the chat if you can hear us? Oh, okay. They're saying they can hear both of us. People are saying they can hear both of us, Alan. But you just can't hear me? Let's see.
All right, it was my mic.
There you go. We can hear you now.
Yeah, but if I step away, can you still hear me okay?
We sure can. Absolutely, we sure can. Yes.
All right. I'll go without
We'll go.
mic.
We'll go with that. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for making time to get together. We're going to take a quick 60 minutes to chat with you regarding sub-twos, regarding wraps, what's occurring in our market, and what's occurring in the real estate as a whole. And so I just want to thank Alan Ceshker, who is a real estate attorney and has been doing deals with me. I've been doing deals together with him. In fact, we did a closing yesterday at one of my properties. He closed on, and I enjoy working with his team because his team understands sub-twos. They understand the legal ramifications. They know the paperwork. They know the wholesaling process, and they're great at getting back to you and getting stuff done. So I really appreciate that, Alan, from you and your team, and Jessica and Debbie and all of them in your area. But Alan, I'm just going to kind of give it over to you, maybe introduce yourself a bit, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about the real estate market. I know there's a lot of people needing to learn how to do sub-twos. They don't fully understand it. They've heard about it. And then we have wholesalers trying to do sub-twos, and they can't bring that same mindset over to sub-two. But before we go into all of that, Alan, welcome this morning. Talk with us, share with us who you are.
Good deal. Good deal. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you having me on. I'm a rap nerd, and so love talking about this stuff. My background, I try to consolidate it into. I'm a 30+ year attorney, have a title office, and we close transactions all over Texas, and we're experts at the complex transactions. And that's me in a nutshell. We're really just a title office on steroids that has an attorney that's been working in the investor work for 20 years or so.
Yeah. And Alan, you started the title company because of the transactions you kept seeing go through your desk.
Yeah. So I was kind of like the mafia. I was drug in against my will, and then back in 07, 08, when the market went to heck and back, mortgage wraps became extremely popular. And so I voraciously ate everything I could eat on mortgage wrap information. And then after the market started coming back, most title offices did the same thing. We just stayed in the space. And so we stayed with these mortgage wrap and complex transactions because I was anticipating a market change. I didn't think it was going to wait until 2023 to occur, but it eventually did. And so here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the market absolutely has changed. Agents are finally starting to realize the market has changed. Sellers are still not fully there. They're maybe at a 30% understanding that the market has changed. But what do we need to look at as, I would say, as investors, as agents, what's occurring in the real estate market today, Alan, that you're seeing as a professional in the legal side, but as an investor in the market side?
So with the interest rates rising on the mortgages, simultaneously with a decrease in demand, buyers not wanting to get that big old giant interest rate, we found some folks are kind of naturally gravitating towards this thought of, well, hey, if I've got this house at 3.5%, why don't I monetize it and go sell this thing, seller finance? But dang it, I've got a mortgage on there. So we're getting these calls from sellers saying, how can I sell my property? Because they don't know about mortgage wraps. And so while I would usually get one of those calls per month, now I'm getting 2 and 3 per week. So that's occurring for us. But then in terms of mortgage wraps, I tell all investors and realtors, you need to know this because it's going to be a valuable tool you can use when it can be used. It's not going to be on every single transaction, but if you end up with a transaction where the seller doesn't have to pay off their mortgage to get into their next house, now you should be talking about seller finance wrap.
Yeah. So these sellers, how are they finding you, and how do they know to call you versus calling an agent? Why are they calling you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've been trying to brand myself as the wrap guy. Mortgage wraps back 20, 30 years ago. If you Googled them, you would see Wally Wrap. Wally Tingley's an attorney, and he created a Wally Wrap, and he even trademarked that. Pretty smart fella.
That's smart.
And I've kind of positioned myself where people understand that it's not the only thing that we do, but we're certainly experts at it. So I've got 3 different escrow teams who I've taught everything there is to know about mortgage wraps and how to handle these things. While if you go over to title company ABC, they're going to say they can close a mortgage wrap. The escrow officer may not know what they're doing. They're going to use some state bar promulgated forms, and they're not going to take care of some of the niceties that need to be taken care of, escrow accounts, insurance, and this kind of stuff. So I guess that's a long way of saying we've been doing them so long and so much that they're kind of just coming to us as the experts now.
Yeah. Now, I have observed some people confusing the SubTo properties, obviously before they get to the wrap to you, but the SubTo properties, and they're saying, oh, it's an assumable loan, so it's the same thing, and they're completely different.
They are. So when we use the term assumption, we're actually using it incorrectly now. It would be a qualified assumption that used to occur. If you wanted to use the term assumption, you'd use non-qualified assumption, and that would be a synonym to subject to. So I try not to use the word assumption, but I'll fall into the trap every once in a while. So a SubTo acquisition is not going to be that qualified assumption, and then it's going to be also different than a mortgage wrap. Also, I don't know if you want to get into there right now, but SubTo is not wrap, and wrap is not SubTo.
Exactly. No, and you clarify this. I remember attending one of your wrap universities, and that's very important for people to understand that a SubTo, you're not assuming the loan, although loans are assumable, right? Some of the loans you can assume them if you want to, but then you lose the investing strategy of a SubTo. Otherwise, there's only so many loans you can assume.
Yeah. Assuming a loan is the same as applying for a loan and getting qualified and purchasing via a loan. And there's only X number of those any person can do. I forget do you remember what the number is? Is it 7 or 10?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think it's 5.
Is it?
Maybe it's 7. I don't assume them, so I never have to worry about it because I'm not about assuming the loan. In other words, my entire strategy is like you. I want to wrap whatever property I get. So the way I look at it all the time, Alan, and I think I discussed this with you, why should I use my credit to buy a house for somebody else's lack of credit? So that's why I never really buy a property using the BER method or any loan methods, because I rather use the seller as a leverage point to end up selling that property without any credit out of me.
Yeah. I mean, it's old school OPM, other people's money.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. But at the end of the day, how do banks make money? Other people's money, right? The banks are the banks for a reason because they're using your money to make more money.
Yeah.
So the SubTo and the wrap is the perfect combination of both for an everyday investor to become the bank.
It is. And let me grab my water real quick just to.
All right, go ahead. We're going to go ahead and shift it over here, and we're going to move over to them. If you have any questions, you're on the call today. You have any questions? You may be hearing us from live from the event page or from a live page. And if you type in questions, we'll get them on our end, and we'll make sure and ask those questions to Alan at the end of the last 15 minutes. So we do have questions coming in, Alan. We're going to reserve those for the end. That way we kind of don't get lost in the conversation. A lot of good info. So Alan, let's go to another thought here. Why are the sub-twos a good investing strategy for, obviously you talked a little bit about the sellers, but let's talk a little bit about maybe that seller who has urgency, right? I know some of the prime candidates for sub-twos are people that go into foreclosure, right? That's the quickest way to get them to say yes. But then you have the others who have medical emergencies, have to move out of the country. Property's been on the market for 190 days. Maybe they're retired and they don't need the cash right now because they don't want to pay Uncle Sam 30% of their capital gains or whatever, they may be selling it for. And then how should agents be looking at a sub-two today? Because the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, oh, that's illegal, right? That's the first thing that comes out of their mouth. So I always say this to them. Well, can you help me find in the Texas property code where it says it's illegal? And, they've never even read the Texas property code. I've read it twice. Yeah. So I know it's not illegal, right? And then the buyers today. So the seller, the agent, and then the buyer, how are they benefiting as a good investment on a sub-two?
So first off, the more arrows you have in your little bag of arrows, the stronger you are. So I would say that the reason a realtor needs to know about it, I've got a house over by my neighborhood. I can't even walk my dog without being out there marketing. So I saw the house was on the market for an extended period of time, went off the market, went back on the market. So I just called them up and said, I don't know if you know this, but you can get more buyers, and you can get a buyer that's going to pay more dollars because you're getting someone into the house that may not be able to get a conventional mortgage. And so I just introduced that realtor to it. But every realtor should know, first off, and every single investor should know about this and prefer it. But just as you were saying, you're not using your money, you're not using your credit, and you're not capping yourself at X units. And then in terms of the seller side of thing, I've got a guy right now, got a VA loan, and he's getting transferred, doesn't need to pay off his mortgage. And so he's able to garner, again, more buyers, more dollars, and sell his house faster. So, I mean, it's a strategy that helps everyone in the equation. A really good one is when someone doesn't have enough equity in their property to sell it and pay everyone on that. Then you can get someone who's going to, again, pay more, come in as a wrap buyer, and then get that thing sold that wouldn't otherwise have sold. You go to short sale or foreclosure. Yeah,
absolutely. I would say that about 90% of the properties that I have taken over sub-two have no equity at all. And with sub-two seller financing on a wrap, you actually can create equity that's not there.
Yeah.
Because talk about that, because a lot of agents don't get that, right? I've had agents say, hey, I don't know what to do with this property. It has no equity. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it has, that low interest rate now, that's an additional benefit. But every single property I've taken had very low equity. And then I immediately go sell it for $20,000 to $40,000 more, seller finance to someone, and create what I call embedded equity. It's false equity that's real to me. So it is a very good way to increase your equity position while you're also cash flowing monthly.
Yeah, and while we say it's false equity, it's what is somebody willing to pay for something is the value of that property, right? If somebody's willing to pay $180,000, but if I can go ahead and wrap it at $240,000 and they're willing to pay for that, that's a true market value because that's what they're willing to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really all I do now is the subject to acquisition and then the seller finance wrap disposition. I don't really do anything else these days.
So for the people listening, Alan, some of them are new to sub-two and some of them have done a couple of sub-twos. They've stumbled upon knowing how to do sub-twos. What do you mean by embedded equity? How are you benefiting as an investor on that? Where does that money go? How does it come? How do you find this?
So I'll use an exact example. We purchased a property up in Bell County, paid $172,000 for it. I don't buy properties that need a bunch of work, so we only put about $5,000 worth of work and closing cost into it, and so we're sitting at around 180 on that thing. We immediately go and sell it for 205. So I've got $25,000 equity in that thing. However, they're bringing their 10,000 down or so. I usually don't get too much down from these smaller deals. So I've got that 15,000 embedded equity. That transaction lasted 7 years, cash flowed $500 a month. And then at sale, we pulled out our approximate 15,000 equity. It was actually more because the amortization tables are going to go at different speeds. So it'll be above 15,000. We were getting an additional $100 equity every single month that passed.
Wow. So you ended up renting that property or wrapping it?
Seller finance wrap. I'm not a landlord.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I hate landlording. I absolutely detest being a landlord. I've tried it. Not for me. But then from the 180 to the 205, there's that cushion.
Yeah.
So you're getting, did you pay any money going into that 180 besides the 5 to clean it up?
No. The most I've ever spent on a SubTo acquisition is probably about 20,000 or so. And that was because the seller had a little bit more equity in there. So we had to pay him more. I don't really want to spend more than that to get into my SubTos. Now sometimes you'll see someone that has a bunch of equity and maybe you can get that via wrap versus SubTo so that the seller's carrying some equity back on that. And that's how I usually do those.
Gotcha. So you make payments to them while they're seller financing you. You turn around and wrap that thing again.
Yep.
Got it. So go back to your sample, 180, 205. There's that $20 embedded equity. Did you ask for 20,000 down on that wrap?
We try to get 10%. A lot of times I don't have the 10%, and I'm a little bit more risky in terms of letting someone into a house for lower dollars. That the down payments, the skin in the game, and what causes them to potentially not default.
Right.
If I have someone default, I've got a free lawyer, i.e., myself, to go and recover that property. So I would advise my clients to not do what I do first off, but I'll take a lower equity or down payment rather, and then a second thing that I'll do is maybe have annual lump sum payments at tax time, where they owe an additional 6,000 down in year one and then 6,000 year two. So I've done that a couple times, but again, I'm not suggesting folks do that unless you have a very, very vetted buyer and they're not going to default.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you give them a performance deed at any point? Only, or do you do it when you purchase, or do you do it even when you sell?
So I don't. You're talking about the deed that you sign in advance.
Yes.
So I don't do that. The legal status of that document is an executory instrument, and therefore, if challenged, it wouldn't be enforceable.
Okay.
Now, if I'm taking a property SubTo and I want to try to give the seller some comfort, I'll say, hey, look, I'll sign a deed. So-and-so will hold it in escrow. There'll be an escrow agreement that says it's to be recorded if I default. And so I'll do it for them to give them comfort because I know I'm not going to contest that. If I had a buyer give me one of those and I went and recorded that, I think I'm opening myself up to some liability there. So I don't suggest those. We used to do them. I call them snapback deeds, but I don't suggest those being used on the seller finance side of it out.
Okay. So it's a good possible tool when you're trying to get that property for that seller to sell it to you as a SubTo.
Yeah. Give them some comfort.
Give some comfort. Right. So if you're on the call today and let's say there's a seller that says, what do you have to prove to me that you're going to not default on my loan? Right. I mean, I'm sure you heard that question many times.
Yep. So the first is if especially if there's some type of dollars going over to the seller, I'm not going to walk away from that money. A. B, if I'm then prettying the property up a little bit, saying I'm not going to walk away from that, and then I would offer the performance deed in that situation. Now I can also say some stuff about me having a license and that being at jeopardy if I don't follow laws and stuff. And then additionally, a lot of the objections we'll get is not are you going to default? What is this legal? Like you were talking about,
Yeah.
And then I start talking about the recent legislation. If the Texas state legislature is making some laws in regard to how to do this, it can't be illegal. They don't have any laws on how to murder people, so you've got laws on how to
So
do
it's
rap.
not legal. And one of the things that you brought up a very important point, because when an agent says to me, "Oh, that's illegal," and I'm like, "Open up your contract, go look at how much you're going to pay the seller, and then there's a little box there. It says seller financing addendum. He can seller finance his deal to me while I'm taking over his note, and then I can turn around and wrap it, right?" But most agents don't really pay attention to what's occurring. I mean, do you see these kind of issues with agents when you're trying to do a sub-2 with them or through them?
Oh yeah, I see it with agents. I
Yeah.
also see it with attorneys. A lot of times I'll get hey, it looks like there was some fraud in this transaction letter from an attorney, and then I'll get the attorney, educate them on what mortgage wraps are, and they go away. But yeah, it's an issue sometimes to get over that these are illegal hump. But now I tell you, that legislature did us a really big favor by making laws governing this stuff. So that's our biggest legitimizing tool that we have now.
You were mentioning a law the other day at your rep university about this very reason. Can you share with us a little bit about that? I know just in short about the right to be able to.
The new laws?
Yes.
You're talking about Senate Bill 43?
43, yes, SB 43.
Yeah, and I can encapsulate that down into a very short discussion. The legislature said you got to do certain disclosures, the 5016 and the insurance disclosure. You got to do those 7 days before, and then got to close at a law and title office, and then you also have to utilize an RMLO. They actually say you have to be one, but right now people are utilizing them, and the commissions seems to be fine with that. So using the RMLO after your third one in a 12-month period, those disclosures and closing at an office are really all that you have to do to comply with that statute.
Right. So at one point, is it still the case, or is it no longer the case where at one point you could actually do 3 on your own and then you had to get the RMLO?
So Senate Bill 43 says you can do 3 in a 12-month period before you have to comply with the whole bill. Now there's also SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank, which are at 5. SAFE Act is 5 de minimis, but complying with Senate Bill 43 allows you to be in compliance with the SAFE Act and as close to compliance with Dodd-Frank as you can get.
Got it. Yeah. What type of wording? You're giving me a lot of things to think about here, Ellen, and I know you and I've had a lot of discussions on the sub-2s that I have, and you're helping me walk through some of those. But and investors on our call here listening, what wording would you give them? Because many of them are going on the MLS to try to find a property, to buy it creatively, and trying to explain to an agent the process. And most agents, this is new, right? They're not investors. Agents are taught to fill out a contract and list the property. That's what we're taught. I'm an agent myself.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not taught investing. We're not taught anything beyond the scope of a listing. How does an investor who finds a good deal on the MLS, calls that agent, explain a creative deal on a possible property that's been on the market 180 days, it's not moving, they want to buy it as a sub-2? What do you suggest their talking point should be?
That's exactly like I said, that house is in my neighborhood. I called the agent. I didn't have to call the agent. I could have done an end run around him, but I didn't. Sometimes I do for other reasons, but called the agent. I said, hey, I saw the house is on the market for a long period of time. Do you think your client would be interested in seller financing? And all I'm doing is setting him up to say, no, there's a mortgage. And so he says there's a mortgage. And I say, oh, well, fortunately, you don't have to pay off that mortgage. You can do a mortgage wrap. But are they interested in seller financing potentially? Yeah. Do they need to pay off their mortgage to get into their next house? Well, they've been gone for 6, 8, 10 months. I know they don't have to.
Wow.
So I'm trying to nudge the real estate agent into that. And then I do have I have two documents I like to use. I have an FAQ document that is every question we've ever been asked about mortgage wraps. And then someone recently said, Alan, do you have a document that helps me explain this to the seller? I said, yeah, our FAQ document. And she said, that's a little bit too much lawyer, Alan. So I just now drafted up a new one-page document that's layman terms of what a wrap is. So you just kind of navigate them down the right path to understanding that they don't have to pay off the mortgage and then try to dig in deeper.
And you know what? Sometimes that simple one-page form satisfies the agent, because many times they have to report to a team lead or they have to report to a broker, and they may not have the right wording to go up that high and still get the process moving. And your one-page letter may have solved that problem.
Yeah. And then what's funny is I like when I get to the Keller Williams agents, they say, nope, my broker doesn't allow this. And then I go ask your broker to see the Keller Williams assumption addendum that they want signed off on every time that they do a mortgage wrap. And they have that. Yeah.
They have an assumption addendum. I want to type this into for everyone to know. Addendum available. So tell me a little bit about that, because I deal with a lot of KW people and they're just immediately no.
So one of my favorite stories was a pretty big Keller Williams outfit. We closed 3 of their mortgage wrap transactions. So I went to the broker and said, hey, do you want me to come in and talk about mortgage wraps? He said, no, we don't allow those. And I said, all right, well, good. We've closed 3 with your brokerage so far. So let me know if you ever want to do it.
That's hilarious.
Their one-page assumption addendum is protecting them. We have a big old giant wrap addendum or assumption addendum, but I don't suggest it be used. There's a bunch of forms bouncing around out there that are 4 or 5 pages, and the seller has to initial each single paragraph. And I think it's a little overkill, and it be honest, it scares the seller. So I don't suggest using those ones that are flying around out there. What I do, I call, I sometimes have to draft a 1911 letter. And what I'm referring to is, if you followed all of my disclosures to all the way to the end, you've disclosed 19 times that this is a wrap transaction, and you've signed and initialed 11 times. And so I have that letter for whenever I get that call from the attorney saying, hey, this looks like it was some fraud going on. I pulled out my 1911 letter and let them know it was okay.
And those disclosures are part of your closing package on the SubTo side.
So we'll have the 5016 needs to be on all of them.
Right.
And then our disclosure is the same on the assumption and the wrap. We're essentially disclosing this is a seller finance transaction where the underlying mortgage is not going to be paid off. There is a due on sale clause in the deed of trust, and the lender has the right to call the note due. And that's my main disclosure.
Okay, so that 501(c)(6) is important because that's really the Texas Property Code, right? Is that the right? That's what we're required to fill out. Yeah,
so it was 5016 has been there, I think, since 2005 at least.
Yes.
But the legislature back in January 21, made it mandatory that 7 days before closing, that 5016 is provided to the seller or the buyer, or that transaction is voidable, which means at any time during the course of that transaction, someone can raise their hand and say, never mind, give me my money back. You can have property.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always made it a practice that when they're filling out my trade contract, I give them a 5.106 immediately, so they're signed together along with the seller's. Let's see, no, that's on my wrap. So I always give those two to make sure that I'm complying to the Texas Property Code. Yeah,
it should be done as early as possible. The Senate Bill 43 did take care of occasions where there's less than 7 days closing. So sometimes if it's foreclosure, you're closing in 3 or 4 days.
Right.
They, in my opinion, they did it kind of silly because now the buyer has 21 days to rescind. So it causes some problems to deal with. But those are not as often. So you're safe at 7 days before, and you have an option if it's less than 7 days.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's important to know. Let's go to another question here. So obviously there's different types of sub-twos in creatively how you can buy them, with seller carryback, with portion of the seller financing, with portion money down. Once you get it, what are some possible exit strategies? The reason I ask this question is because some people on our call are part of our communities, and some of them have been wholesalers. So there's a transition that I've seen, and I'm having to sometimes educate and call them when they send me a sub-2 deal that they don't want to keep. They just want to wholesale a sub-2 deal. But their mentality is still thinking as a wholesaler, not as a sub-2 wrap buyer, because I tell them a sub-2 is a 30-year marriage with the seller and a 30-year marriage with the buyer. Now, the seller, you may never see him again. You get POAs, power attorneys. You may never need them, but there may be a chance you may need them, right? But with the buyer, he's constantly going to be sending you money every month. With a wholesaler, it's a transactional sale, right? Wholesaling is sales and marketing. That's all it is. Sub-2 is investing and liquidity of your finance or taking care of those finances throughout the duration of that sub-2 wrap. So what are some strategies that you're seeing that are important if somebody's moving into sub-2 and needing to expand their portfolio of how to use a sub-2 in the wrap?
So I hear your frustration when
yes.
you have wholesalers, they come and say, I'm going to wholesale this thing. And I immediately say, why don't you buy it and then sell it and cash flow monthly? And it causes their heads to turn sideways like a dog hearing a weird noise. But every single wholesaler out there should understand when they're wholesaling a property, they could be buying that for $0 and selling it. All you got to do is just have the simultaneous close so that the down payment dollars from the end buyer are your down payment dollars if needed. And it is, it's simultaneously frustrating, but then I'm appreciative because now I get to go be that buyer. And so the prototypical strategy is the most often seen situation for allowing for a sub-2 is the foreclosure, like you said. And so you've got someone that's distressed. They're easily going to agree to a sub-2 acquisition, and so you've now got control of that property. The most often exit strategy is to, in fact, go seller finance wrap, but every exit strategy works. We see a lot of sub-2 acquisitions whenever the investor is partnering with the seller. So we got equity partnering or what have you. So instead of getting your hard money loan to buy that thing and pay off the seller, tell the seller, I'm going to pay you some interest on this thing. So while you only want $20,000 equity in this thing, I'm going to end up giving you $27,000 equity. Go flips this thing up and then sell it to the end buyer and share the proceeds. So that it's a valuable tool for that, but it can be a long-term rental, short-term rental. It can be any exit strategy known to investors can occur after you acquire that property sub-2.
Sure. And you picked up a little bit of my frustration, Alan, and I think you've discussed about this before, because they'll send me a $225,000 house and they say, oh, my entry fee is only $45,000. I'm like, who in the heck are you paying $45,000 for a $225,000 house, right? Because the average wrap for an owner occupant, which is the only people I sell to, they're going to have 10 to 15 at the most to put as a down payment.
Yep.
Well, there's no way you're going to make money on the 45 because they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to give the seller, $15,000, and the agent, he's getting $12,000, and I, as a wholesaler, I won $15,000, and I'm like, no, that's not my entry. I'm not your buyer, and I hope someone buys it from you that doesn't know math, because they're not going to make money out of that property, and I see that a lot going on today.
Yeah, it is. And then you talk about the $200,000-$300,000 houses being the wraps, but we've wrapped a $1.5 million house. We've got one right now that's for sale. It's $795,000 sub-2 acquisition that they're contemplating. So the big ones work too. It's just more prevalent to see them in the 200 to 400 range. Well, but and again, my entry point, I don't want to spend more than $20,000, into that house.
Yeah. So the way that I do this, Alan, and with your advice as well, is I always shoot my entry never to be between 5 to 7% all in. Therefore, I can now sell it at 10 to 12%. And the reason I do that is because I need cash flow now and cash flow later. So the reason I want that extra 10, 15 coming in from the down payment after I paid whatever closing cost it cost me to close on, because then I can take those and accumulate those to go buy some more. Otherwise, you're working for free, and I don't want to work for free.
You know, the best example of that is I had a client said, "Hey, I've got $500,000. I want to go buy a couple properties."
Sure.
And I said, "Well, why don't we take your $500,000 and buy hundreds of properties?" And he laughs at me, and I say, "No." And I talk about, the SubTo acquisition and seller finance sale. You should be, like you said, you should be at worst case scenario, net zero by the time you've sold that property.
Sure.
And usually you're up $10, $15, $20,000 in that type of scenario.
Yeah. And the goal is that maybe you're at least making $100 to $200 cash flow on the arbitrage of that wrap. So even if you're net zero at closing, you're getting $200 a pop, just like a normal landlord would, but you don't have to take care of toilets and you don't have to take care of anything else because it's not your problem anymore, which is lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. Our range is 200. I say me and my wife do it together, between 200 and 1,100 cash flow per month. I've noticed that whenever you split them up, one takes one takes the next. She always gets the 1,100 ones, and I get the 200 ones for some reason. But I don't know why.
Oh well, good for her. She probably doing a better job than you are at the negotiations. So. You're the rap king, Alan. You're the rap king as far as I'm concerned here in Texas. Everyone listening in, please connect with Alan. You're able to learn about his business here. I'll put your information here. Connect with him. He's got a great title, escrow closing company that you can use to close. Also, great information on how to buy the SubTos and wraps. I'm running all of my deals through Alan now, and I feel very comfortable because I know I'm going to close on time. And even if we're not, they tell me why, and they go and fix whatever issue occurred on title, the seller, whatever, and then we go and close. So, Alan, you're the wrap king. What's a wrap?
So that's a small question.
Yeah.
The wrap process, it's kind of interesting because you can come in with almost no knowledge. You've got your Trek 1 to 4 filled out. You don't even have your seller finance addendum filled out. You're still going to make it through the process. Now, I always say information is power. So the more that you know what's going on behind the scenes, the better. And so the only thing that we need to get started to close a wrap or SubTo is the Trek 1 to 4 and either the loan assumption addendum or the seller finance addendum.
Okay.
But after that is where all the fun starts. And obviously we're getting all of the information regarding the existing mortgage, statement, payoff, reinstatement if they're behind. And you're getting a copy of the promissory note also. If you're going to be subject to the obligations of that note, you want to know if it's an adjustable rate mortgage. You want to know if there's a balloon date. Want to know if it's been modified, et cetera. So that's step one. And then some of the niceties are, like I spoke about just earlier, you got to true up the escrow account, make sure some issues don't go wrong there, bring it current for that sale to occur. The other thing is insurance is a pretty big issue. Yep. Insurance has to be put in place correctly. And then also, lastly, the authorization. You've got to get authorization to deal with that mortgage company directly when you're buying SubTo. And real quick, let me back up. SubTo in my world is we create a new note. There's a new note, new deed of trust, whole loan, set of loan documents. It's just when it's a SubTo, it's an exact wrap. 192,000 is owed. Yes. We're wrapping 192,000 new note. When a wrap is, let's say someone owes 300, but their house is worth 700. So you get a $600,000 new note wrapping around that 300,000 note. So that's the difference between wrap and SubTo. But the process for us, and really the process for the investors, is really the exact same. Trek 1 to 4, loan documents, title's going to pull in all that title needs to pull in. If you're not doing it yourself, if you're not getting the authorization for yourself, if you're not getting the documents from the mortgage company, getting the buyer and seller information forms, title is going to push you the right direction. So what I always tell new investors is two things. Think of a SubTo or a wrap as seller finance. It's just seller finance. Ignore that there's a mortgage not being paid off to conceptualize this thing. Is one. And then two is all you need, like I said, is that Trek 1 to 4 and the addendum. Title is going to hold your hand. If they know what they're doing, is going to hold your hand and take care of the other, what I call niceties of a SubTo or a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the really short version of what a wrap is, but explainable and understandable for someone to know. And, the important part that I also look at in the wrap is that escrow servicer, that you make sure the seller knows. Well, no, not so much a seller, but as much as the buyer know that there's an escrow servicer involved, because he's never going to send me a check. It's always going to be the escrow servicer. So everything's above board and everything's transparent.
Yeah. Yeah. That third party loan servicing is a lifesaver when you have what I call an end user seller to an end user buyer wrap or SubTo, because the buyer wants to pay direct and the seller wants to be paid. So we're like, what do we do? It's like trading baseball cards. You give me yours first. So that third party loan servicing company is 40, maybe $50 a month, and it saves the transaction often.
Right. And many times I just go ahead and put that on the buyer side anyway. It's part of his process. It's not my loan anymore, right? He's got to pay for it, just like the banks do it to me. So I do it to them.
Yeah.
We have a great question here by David Aaron Brown. Do you use a specific Trek form for both SubTo transactions and then the wraps?
So we'll see a lot of times these what I call real estate guru contracts for SubTo or assumption or wrap, and I advise extremely against those things. They're usually out of state. The Trek 1 to 4 for a SubTo acquisition only needs that assumption addendum. Now I put something in the special provisions that says, again, this is a wrap transaction, mortgage not going to be paid off, et cetera. That's in both the SubTo and the wrap disposition. But I advise vehemently that we just use the Trek 1 to 4 and don't go out there and find these real estate guru forms out there. And they just need the Trek promulgated addenda to make them complete.
Yeah, I agree. Texas is a different beast compared to all the other states, and we really got to stay to our requirements here. Thank you for that. A second question is from Jason. Let's not overuse and overemphasize the performance date, especially for a wrap, where we are going to immediately transfer legal title. And I think you kind of talked about that. I think you're just making a comment on that.
Well, no,
What are your thoughts?
I think what they're saying is, all right, so if I'm going to make the seller comfortable by giving them a performance deed or access to a performance deed, I'm not going to let them have it.
Sure.
Escrow team will have it. What Jason's saying is, if I go sell that thing now, then my end buyer doesn't pay. Now that performance deed is going to be thrown out there and used. But I stay involved in those types of transactions where when my end buyer defaults, I don't default on that obligation. I have. And I've had 4 situations where I've had a default on the end buyer side, and I'm a very, very nice lender. And so I don't just willy-nilly start going and foreclosing against them. I just call them and ask them what's going on. And we've gotten those 4 properties back by agreement every single time. So I agree a bit with Jason. If you're not going to step in and pay that mortgage when the end buyer's not paying, then that performance deed wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah. And I think you and I have been going through one property that you and I have been discussing with my buyer, but I gave them 6 months grace to pay, and then they don't pay. So then, you got to pull out the big guns, and that's when you call Alan and figure out a profitable solution so everybody wins, even to avoid that foreclosure. All right, we have a next question. Where did that question go? And this one, actually, let me redo this one so it's got the name. It's from Michael. Michael saying, when you wrap to an end buyer, do you keep reserves for the buyer just in case they default, or do you use that embedded equity in the property for cushion?
So we have a situation right now. The seller, the exact same situation I was discussing. End buyer was paying over to a loan servicing company, and they didn't make their payments, so therefore the underlying seller didn't get paid. To fix that now, the investor is coming and putting in 6 months of payments as reserve with that loan servicing company to avoid that default situation again. We would use that equity or that cushion when seller's scared, but we're certainly not going to offer it early.
Yeah. And sometimes I kind of do this with the end buyer, with the escrow servicer. I require 2 payments, their initial payment and an additional payment. So in case they're ever late, the escrow servicer has that on escrow. Otherwise, it comes out of my pocket.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
like to pay for somebody else's mortgage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not exactly, but same type thing with underlying mortgage. Their escrows go up, and then I get a letter saying, hey, your escrows have gone up. Your payment goes up $87. I just mimic that letter, ship it to my end buyer, and say your payment goes up $87. Everything's a pass through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens. I always check every March, April. We're seeing that escrow going up. Needs for that. All right, thank you for that. Next question, Carlos. Carlos says, questions: are you able to wrap on an existing wrap?
So the answer is unequivocally yes, and our record is a wrap of a wrap of a wrap of a wrap, which
Okay.
I don't necessarily like that. A mortgage wrap transaction is just a tiny bit more risky than a conventional. So if you're multiplying it by 4, I don't like it. Nothing went wrong with that one. So the answer is yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. We already asked this one. Are there any special steps for a licensed agent or disclosures? And I think you covered a bit on that.
Yeah, I would say yes to that. There is a special step. You go and point to if you're closing with us, you point to me as the person with all the knowledge. I hop on the phone with sellers and end buyers all the time to explain wraps. So use my FAQ document, use my 1-page document, but also say we work with a 30+ year attorney who's been doing these things for decades, and you're able to talk with him. I wouldn't as an agent start describing this more than just generally like we did earlier. I would say this is an option for us, and then dump them over to the expert.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's better to have a more knowledgeable person explain the process than you to mess it up along the way, because you will mess it up. And what I normally do, Alan, and I don't know if this is a good idea with you, but this is what I do. I basically tell the seller, listen, this is the way I'm willing to buy it, but I'd like to explain all the details and have you and the seller involved so that you can hear me explain it. Because if I explain to you and you try to explain to him, we may get lost in translation. And many times they just say, yeah, no worries, we'll do a 3-way call. And then I jump in and make that conversation versus telling the seller to explain seller financing.
Yeah, and if Varelli is asking in terms of a real estate agent acting as an investor, are there more disclosures than other than saying in big giant 40 font that I am a real estate agent? I'm not representing you. I'm buying this property and I'm trying to buy it for a gain. Stuff like that. You do need those disclosures.
Absolutely, yeah, you do. And I think this question from Heather is pretty much the same. What if you have a realtor involved?
So if a realtor is acting just in their realtor capacity, everything's 100% the same. You get your 3% commission or what have you. I have one right now where investor came and offered a SubTo acquisition of this property. Real estate agent didn't know anything about anything, with wraps. And so what that investor did was just dump that real estate agent over to me and said, talk to Alan. And I explained everything to them, and they said, all right, so I still represent the seller. Yeah. I still get my 3% commission. Yeah. Everything's the same for the realtor involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Anastasia asks, is this information about 5.016 applicable to North Carolina and or other states?
So the specifically the 5016 is not. Now, those other states may have their disclosure statements that are required, and all of them are under the SAFE Act and the Dodd-Frank Act. So you should be utilizing a RMLO, residential mortgage loan originator, to assist vetting the ability to repay for the buyer. But 5016 is Texas specific.
Yes. And it essentially says the buyer is buying knowing that there's an underlying loan and that you're not telling the lender that you're actually selling this transaction. So it's really a disclosure of that information.
Yep.
Then we have, let's see, Michael's asking, so a wrap is a subject to transaction that will be turned around to a seller finance deal to an end buyer.
I would say sort of.
Yeah.
So whenever you're, again, when you're buying via wrap, it's a larger note wrapping around a smaller note. My acquisition can be a SubTo acquisition, but I can also acquire a property via wrap so that seller is getting more money per month, and then I go seller finance that thing and I get more money per month. So it could cash flow for both me and the seller. I see a wrap acquisition a lot during the equity partnering, partnering with the seller, fix and flip, and then sharing proceeds. But yeah, you can purchase or sell via a wrap or SubTo.
Nicole asks, without cash on hand, is it still profitable to use I think she meant RMLO, as an entry into a SubTo deal?
Is that a private mortgage, a private money lender?
Oh, maybe that's what she means. Yeah, private money lender. That's what she's asking.
So even better if you time it right. So you get a property under contract and you get yourself a 45-day period. You go out and find your end buyer before you're closing, and then you can use a B, B, C, or simultaneous close, so that end buyer funds are passing through to the seller side. But to answer your question directly, yes, we often will see a private money lender come in with the dollars down for the acquisition, and then they get paid off whenever they seller finance that to the end buyer and get those dollars down. We see that quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, and at that time you're just playing a time game, and who can pay first. And at the end of the day, is you want to go in and get that thing sold before you have to pay. That's the way I used to buy my foreclosures. I would get a private money lender, lend me the money. I get the property. I sold it in 30 days before I had to pay interest, and I pay him back. And after the fourth or fifth transaction, he figured it out, and then I lost my private money lender. So I should have started at least giving him 2 or 3 months worth of interest, but I was going too fast, and so I kind of lost him on that.
Yeah.
He wants the interest off, obviously.
Oh yeah.
We have Heather asking, I have a seller finance of is it? What is she asking? I have a seller finance available. Oh, she's saying she's got one there. Well, that's great. Send it on the SubTo, and there's people always wanting to buy there, Heather. And then
I tell you
Carlos,
what, even better. My daughter moved out to Alabama. Send that deal to me, and I'll have my daughter start her investing early now.
There you go. What's the entry fee? Let us know what the entry fee is, and then we can understand that. So, Carlos, thank you for your thanks. Ardieli saying thank you. Let me see if I have any other questions. 1 second. They keep popping up, and I can't go fast enough to get them here. Here we go. Michael is asking a question for us. I want to post it for us to see. And Alan, I know we got a couple of minutes before you need to go because you're a busy guy. And thank you for this. Let me. Well, I don't know why it's not posting. So let me just go ahead and ask them. Michael asks, Alan, do you have a network of lawyers like yourself that you can recommend in other states with your skill set?
We have a sporadic number of states covered. Louisiana, Oklahoma. I don't know all of them, but my suggestion for someone who's either from Texas going to buy property outside of Texas, or if you're in a different state buying properties, is step one, find an online real estate networking group. Post a question. Hey, anyone have any referrals for an attorney who knows how to do mortgage wraps? And then if you're one of my title clients, I provide a free service again for that of talking with that attorney and essentially vetting them and making sure they're real. mortgage wrap attorney. So that's the best way, is post it on that networking group, find a name, and then let's talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll know in about 2 to 3 questions whether that attorney is knowledgeable in wraps or not.
Nicole follows up with a question: is there a way to not ruin the seller's DTI?
All right, if we're going to give gold stars out today, I'm going to give a gold star to Nicole because that's a fantastic question.
Way to go, Nicole.
she wins for today. The reason it's a good question is because that's a problem. I might be in a distressed situation right now, but gosh dang it, I'm trying to get out of that distressed situation. So the short answer to that is, after 6 months, that seller can take the note and evidence of timely payment for 6 months over to their mortgage guy. And when they run the numbers, it's the same as an investor that has a rental. The income will go to offset that debt. Now, it's not 100%, but it's 80%, up to 80%. So it doesn't ruin their DTI. Still has a minimal effect on it, but not the 100% of the debt.
Yeah. And that's actually a very beneficial way for the seller to still sell you the SubTo deal, because he may not be ready to buy anyway. I normally recommend a year because they want to see some form of consistent payment. But if 6 months works, and that's awesome. That's great. Alan, what are your fees for each transaction consultation they're asking?
So the fees for a SubTo mortgage wrap set of loan documents, and also the management of that file that is needed, is $750 per side. We're kind of in the middle ground, actually probably a little bit lower than middle, on folks that do mortgage wraps out there, attorneys that do mortgage wraps. The highest I've seen is $5,000, and the lowest I've seen is $200, which is fun because there's an attorney that hands you a set of documents, doesn't create a settlement statement, and you go out there and just close it on the kitchen table. And I always say, take my card for those transactions so I can represent you when they blow up. All the other costs are the same as any other conventional title office. The attorney's fees for drafting the loan documents are $750 a side. And in terms of consultation, as of right now, you can call me anytime and I'll talk to you about wraps all day long. I don't bill for the consultation.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, just quick 1 minute. Alan, you have a Wrap University program. It's online. People can get it. Can they go to your Facebook? Everybody's got your Facebook here, and send you a DM. Can you post it on your Facebook so people can follow up, click on that link, and go straight to your site?
Yeah. So it's posted regularly by the marketing folks, but really the easiest way to get to us is assistant@ceshkergroup.com. So if you can if you can accomplish the first task of spelling my last name, you've got it. So it's just assistant@ceshkergroup.com. We have an Austin Wrap University occurring on May 20, and then the online course has launched. And so if you just email assistant@ceshkergroup.com and ask for that information, we can email it out to you.
Excellent. We're putting it there on the chat as well for everyone to see that as well. Any of you there that want to connect with Alan, please feel free to do so. You want to connect with me, go ahead. Our contact information is there. I currently have 9 seller finance wraps available for sale. If you want to become a landlord, buy one of those, 35,000 down, the house is yours. 45,000 down, the house is yours. You turn around and wrap it. Let it build equity for 2 years. Then go ahead and sell it, right? So if you're in the buy and hold business industry, connect with me. I sell a lot of seller finance wraps ready for sale. Alan, you've been an awesome host and guest with me here. We're going to be doing this as often as possible. If you're listening on, there's more trainings to come, and we're going to go ahead and catch you on the next time. Alan, thanks for your time. We'll see you next time.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much. I'm a wrap nerd, always willing to talk about wraps.